Hey there, Tracy here, Imagine Artist in Residence. In today's video, I am going to show you how to make this adorable little bag. We'll do some putting together, we'll do some stamping, and we'll be doing some decorating. And let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so I've got everything you're going to need. So we're going to need some white paper, some Stays-On ink, some VersaFine Clair in Nocturne, a couple of pieces of 6x6 pattern paper, and double-sided is best, and stamp set of your choice, a ruler, some glue, and a hole punch, and a, what's that thing called? A scoreboard. You don't have to have these things. You can score without a scoreboard, but it is handy. So I'm going to score at 1.5 inches on 3 sides of this. And what we need to pay attention to here is, and I'm going to go ahead and fold these over just so I can see where my score lines are, because I will be trimming some out of this piece. Now the second piece, you want to lay it on upside down, but first I'm just going to trim out these little guys, and I'm trimming them to the inside of the score line and maybe even a little bit more, just so that everything fits nicely. So we know that's the top, this is the bottom, so I want to make sure that I score the bottom correctly. So I'm going to score 1.5 at the bottom and 1.5 on either side. And so the way this is going to come together is it'll be the right side up on both sides. That's an important part there. So we just get those fold down, and I'm just going to kind of trim a little V out of either the right and the left side of the bottom piece. And just pick that little piece out of there. And what's going to happen here is these are going to glue together at the inside, but you want to double check and make sure that both sides are going the correct way. And then I'll just take my glue, my liquid glue. Actually, I'm going to take my Stays-On, and this is in a chai tea color, and I will list it down below. And the reason I like to use Stays-On this paper is because it's a little bit of a glossy paper, and so I have a better chance of my ink staying stuck to it instead of coming off on my hands. So this is the reason that I like to use this Stays-On this type of paper. So I'm just going to run the Stays-On along my edges with just a little foam tool, just to kind of give it a little bit more depth, kind of delineate everything. Also, it helps me see my lines, and that's always helpful. And so that I don't have any white edges. Okay, we've got that done. Now we're ready to glue. So I'm just going to take the flap and I'm going to glue it down. I'm going to make sure that I don't go all the way to the score line there, just above it, because I don't want it on that score line and getting in the way of folding. So I'm just going to use liquid glue. You could use tape if you want to. And I like to use the glue just to make sure that I can adjust everything around, make sure that it folds up properly. And then I'll just put something heavy on it for it to dry. And once that's dry, we can start to work on our next steps. So you can see that it comes together like so. These middle pieces go in, and the back comes up first. And you can decide which is the back and the front. But you want the back to come up first because you want the front flaps to go to the back. So I'm just going to add some glue down to these little flaps. These are nice sturdy little bags too, at least with this kind of paper. I'm just going to glue that flap down. And if you want, you can add a clip or something to kind of hold that until the glue is completely set. Because you want to make sure too that it's nice and straight. So this is why I like to use liquid glue on here, because I can adjust it if need be. And we'll just add some glue here. And then I'll add a little clip to kind of hold it until the glue sets. And that part is ready to go. And just make sure everything's nice and tucked and glued down. So my piece here, I need to cut a white piece that's just a little bit smaller than that, because that's where I'm going to be doing my stamping. And it's up to you how much smaller you want to make it. You could just make it tiny. You could make a bow or a ribbon. This is completely decorate at will. But I'm going to go ahead and trim this down. See if I like it. And then I've got two pieces here because you can do front and back, but in the end I ended up not wanting to do the back. So I'm just going to do the front. And I'm going to go ahead and do my stamping now. And I'm going to be coloring with pencils. So I'm going to decide on which things I want. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of masking too, because I want this little bear sitting on the little stump. So in order for him to be the frontmost, I need to stamp him first. And so I'm positioning him where I want him on the card. And then I'm going to take just a little bit of masking tape. And this is just some like generic Post-it tape from Amazon. And I'm going to stamp the little bear down on that tape. And I'm going to use the StazOn so because the tape has just a little bit, it's a little bit slick. And it doesn't need to be stamped perfectly because I'm going to be cutting it out. And that's going to serve as my mask. So I'll go ahead and peel that tape off, and then I can stamp down my little bear, and I'm going to stamp him down in the VersaFine Clair in the Nocturne. And just make sure he's nice and dark. And he is. VersaFine will usually get it first time every time, except for when you very first use a stamp. If you haven't used a stamp before, sometimes you need to condition it a little. So just kind of deciding where I want my stump so I know how much bear I need to cut out, because I don't really need to cut the whole thing. And I'm just going to cut this bottom part out to the line. And this is a very low tack tape, so it's not too hard to cut. You could cut it with a razor knife if you wanted to on a little cutting mat. Doing that, the tape will stick to the mat and it won't move around on you, but I'm pretty confident in my fussy cutting here. So I'm just going to cover the bottom half of this bear and then put the stump where I want it. And you can see why I didn't need to worry about the top half, because it's not getting stamped on. So I'll use my VersaFine Clair again in the Nocturne and just stamp this down. And it might need a couple because I've got that mask layer on there and it's heavy. Well, it's not heavy, but you know, it's a multi-level surface that I'm stamping on. And now we've got our little bear sitting on the little stump and ready to color. So I did color him off camera and I used pencils. And I'm just going to add a little bit of blue around here, but I'm also going to edge up the edge just to kind of match the rest. And I'm going to go ahead and use the same color, because I want the same color family. And just kind of go around the edges with my little foam tool. And this is, you know, sort of a fall themed. That's what I was getting at when I made this bag. I was thinking fall themed, like maybe, you know, you've got family, kids that don't trick or treat because it's not a good neighborhood or it's too cold or whatever. You could bring them some lovely little treats. So I'm just going to use this little blue pencil, and I'm using, these are Carbothello Stabilo chalk pencils. They are my favorite to color with. And I'm just kind of lightly going in with this light blue because I decided later that it really needed that. Otherwise, it was fine the way it was too. And then I'll just take a blending stump, if I can find her, and kind of blend that out. And that's just going to give a very light spray, so to speak, of that blue with sort of a cloudy look because I left lines in there. And that's what I'm after. Here we go. Couldn't be easier. If you've never tried these kind of pencils, definitely try them. And they work great with the VersaFine inks. Okay, now I'm happy with my bear, and I can glue him down to the front part of the bag. And notice I'm doing all of this before I put the bag together, because it's just easier to glue it down to a flat surface than trying to get it glued down to the bag. And again, you could use tape for this if you wanted to. Just get this plenty of glue on here, and I am using my bookbinding glue. It's almost exclusively what I use. I'll just get this glued down here. Now if you wanted, you could take some pinking shears and make the top fancy, or take a die. If you have a long slimline type die, take a die and make that fancy. But in this case, we just left it straight. You could cut a little dip in like a, I don't know, like with a circle cutter, and just cut like half a circle at the very top middle. But not necessary. Now I'm going to put something heavy on here and let this dry. Once it's dry, I can complete putting the bag together. So all you need to do is lift it up and glue these side flaps down. And I'll just add a little clip on here because this glue takes a minute to grab, and I don't want anything moving on me. I'll use my little bone folder to just kind of burnish down the glue, and then just hold this down. Make sure everything's burnished down, and then we'll move on to the next steps. So I have here some little green sparkle spots, and I don't know why I decided to do green, but I did. And I'm just going to put them all over just because I want some bling on this bag. You could emboss it. You could do, it's just, there's so many things you can do. And so I just grabbed something from my stash and decided that's what I'll use today. Do a few more. Almost like it's a polka dotted background. Why not? Who doesn't love polka dots? Okay, we're ready to go. Everything's dry. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure in 1/2 inch from the sides and 1/2 inch from the tops and make little marks, and that way I can punch out my marks and get them basically in the right spot. You know, sometimes it's not all that easy to aim, but you can see here that there's lots of room in that bag. And I'm just using some twill from my stash to kind of make little handles for the bag. You could use ribbon, you could use rope, you could use twine. Use what you have. And I just want to make sure that those knots aren't too tight so that they pull through. And then just make sure everything's all nice and straight in there. And that the knots are all the way to the end so they're both the same size. There's our little handle. And you could tie that handle together, you could leave it without a handle. But here I have it with some tissue inside and some little candies inside. And what a fun little treat. And I love these caramels. So I hope that you try making one of these or more for the holiday seasons. And thanks so much for watching the video. I'll have everything you need listed in the description box down below. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, don't forget to subscribe. And if you do, hit that notification bell so you'll get notified each time we upload a new video. Take care. Bye-bye.